We'd like to have Ellie Painted Crow tell us about her experiences as a soldier that's come up from the California National Guard, as a grandmother, and what happened to her in Iraq, and then what's happened to her afterwards. Ellie?
Good morning. Just want to say thank you to Ann for inviting me up here and be part of this group. I haven't been in too many groups participating. A couple things with Code Pink, but a lot of this is pretty hard. I was in the Army Reserves 22 years, a couple years active duty, and had a lot of different jobs from communication. My last job was a truck driver. Prior to that, I was a drill sergeant. So I had a very rigid and strong attitude about military. Also being Native, it is something that we're taught very young. It's a great honor to serve in the armed forces because that is the only thing we have left around us to be warriors. And believe it or not, women have been warriors for a very long time. And so I'm glad to see that this is happening now because somewhere along the way it got changed where we had to be silent, and I was never one of those people. So I'm glad to see that there's more women out here willing to speak up. My tour in Iraq was a real eye-opener for me. Being Native, I'm very sensitive to comments, to subtle messages that are said, and I can feel racism from a very long distance. And I never believed that the military was racist. You know, they tell you when you go in there you're green or brown or whatever your uniform is, and the color doesn't make a difference. But I found that not to be a very true statement or a reality for me while I was in Iraq, because my biggest enemy was my own company. And I would hear statements, briefings from officers calling enemy territory Indian country. And I found that very shocking. Here I was sitting on the side, and I would wonder, well, what side should I be on then if this is Indian country? Perhaps I'm on the wrong side. And the other thing I faced was racism because I was Native and because I was female. And the interesting thing about that is that the racism that I felt most from was my commander, who was a female and white, and did everything she could to disempower any person of color who was in any kind of position to have any kind of authority. Platoon sergeants were changed over. Our truck master, who was 15 years active duty, was deployed to Baghdad because he was black. Our maintenance NCOs, everybody who was of color, what they were ordered to do was to train a white soldier who was not MOSQ'd, who was not trained in that job. And if they did a good job in training that soldier, then the person that did the training could stay as an assistant. As a result of that, I ended up standing up for one of my soldiers who was an E5, a black E5 NCO, and he was admin, and our commander sent him on leave and came back and told him that he no longer had the job, but his job was not to train a white soldier. He refused and asked to go to JAG, and was denied JAG. At the same time, she really didn't like women. Here was an officer who was not upholding the no alcohol policy because she was getting drunk with soldiers, and she was demeaning women soldiers in every opportunity. I was an E7, and there was only one other E7, and everybody else was an E4, all the other females. So a lot of the times they would come and say, Sergeant Painted Crow, this is going on, what do I do? And at some point, she saw the power that E7 NCO has over privates and E4s as far as, them respecting them. And so what she decided to do was to take away our power base. And the way that she did that was that she moved all the E7s into privates' tents and broke our sense of power. If you don't know anything about military structure, I'm sure everybody does. NCOs have different places in terms of where they live, and privates and E4s and below have different places because there's things that NCOs talk about, things that NCOs have to do that are different. In doing this, what happens, instead of getting the privates to move into our tents, we had to move into theirs. We lost every piece of authority that we ever had, and I actually found myself arguing with E4s and E3s. That was just, other things that happened really upset me to the point where I really wanted to hurt my commander. After seeing all the things she was doing to all these soldiers, and everybody felt pretty helpless because the battalion commander was supporting this. The fact that she was court-martialing and giving Article 15s for soldiers who were drinking when there was alcohol in her breath was just beside me. I couldn't take it. So I stood up to her, and my first sergeant tried to stand up to her, but in the end they were going to Article 15 him, so he backed down. And the NCO that was requesting JAG and was denied was getting shipped to a place called Scania. And if anybody knows Scania, it's known for mortars. And you get to go to Scania when you're in trouble and you haven't followed the rules. So he was going to Scania, and I went to the IG to talk to somebody, EEO, to talk to somebody. The next thing I know, I was going to Scania with this NCO. We asked again to see JAG. They said no, that we would have to move out at 5 o'clock in the morning to the next convoy. And the sergeant said, "What do I do, Sergeant Painted-Crow?" And I said, "Well, we're not leaving. We are going to miss movement until we see JAG. Because once we get out there, we don't know when we'll see JAG. We're not sure when that's going to happen." So what ended up happening is they tried to court-martial me, give me Article 15. They couldn't do either because I challenged the commander and we got kicked out. Went to Scania and stayed there. So that's my little story about racism. It goes on to a lot of other things, but there's so much I need to talk about. The other thing I want to talk about is rape that happens out there. And there are women being raped by our own soldiers. And it is not being addressed appropriately. I used to be an associate director to sexual assault. I am a victim of sexual assault. Or actually, I'm a survivor of sexual assault. I'm not a victim to anything. And sexual assault happens quite a bit in the military, but you don't ever talk about it with anybody, number one, because most of the people that you have to talk about it with are men and they minimize it. This was the case in my unit. We had some soldiers early on coming to me and saying, "Sergeant Painted-Crow, this guy is saying this about this other woman," and really terrible language about what they were going to do to these women, young women, 20 years old, and they would come to me and say, "What do I do?" I took it to the first sergeant, took it to the commander, and the statement was actually they were talking about anal intercourse. And I went to the first sergeant and I said, "This is what is being said by these sergeants to these E4s." And my first sergeant's reply was, "Well, tell them to walk with their back against the wall," was how to handle it. And so I decided that we needed to take charge of ourselves. And so myself and another E7 that was there at the time, Sergeant Ward, we were the highest ranking there. So we took all these females and we went to I forget the office, EEO or whatever that is, and we took all the women out there. We had them all write statements. And got a lot of people upset because we relieved 4 commanders and 4 first sergeants in the first 3 months that we were deployed. So I'm not very well liked by the higher echelon. But I really don't care at this point. I didn't care at that point either. I mean, I actually thought about going AWOL because of the commander and the leadership and myself and the other E7 that was there. We had a plan to go to Italy, and then the trains blew up in Italy. I thought, well, we can't go there. So, rape happens a lot. There was a rape incident when I was in Cedar 2. And the way that they handled it was very poorly. They sent a CID female, probably about 21, to come and give a teaching about what sexual assault was about. And basically her teaching was about that there's a bunch of horny guys, so you guys have to be careful. And if you know anything about sexual assault, it's not about that at all. It's about power and control. It's about anger, internalized anger. And she gave this teaching, and I was just shocked because, number one, I think that sexual assault training needs to be for men and for women also, and all we had was women there. And the way that she minimized and almost victimized the person who was raped in the way that she was speaking, not about her personally, but just the way that she handled it. I felt duty-bound after the whole training to go up to her and say, what is your experience and what do you know? Because everything you're teaching is incorrect. And I want to know who your supervisor is, because you are not teaching these women how to protect themselves. You're not teaching them what it's about. And really the men need to know about this, so why are we only having women here? She was very defensive, young soldier. You know, I wasn't trying to challenge her. I was just trying to educate her. But like I said, I was a drill sergeant, and I just have this way about me sometimes in a uniform. And I ended up researching that and sending that up to headquarters up in Toledo to educate them about the trainings they were presenting. I don't know if it got better or if it didn't, but I got banned from that company, that camp soon after that, so I didn't get to follow up. But what I will tell you is that women are set up to get raped. They tell you you need to have a battle buddy to go to the latrine, to go to the shower. And then what they do is I found several companies while I was in Scania, because it was a transient company, a transient base camp where soldiers came in, ate, refueled, spent the night in sort of a Motel 6 kind of place. You know, civilians run that really now. And what I found was there were a lot of women that would come through very young who were in an all-male company. So they had no battle buddies. And they were constantly harassed, constantly. I had one soldier come up to me, and actually I met her again when I came back to state, Fort Bliss. She was sent to me because at that point I was working for the mayor's cell, and my job was to supervise the details that were going out of the base camp and give them a briefing and brief them when they came back. And this one soldier had gotten in trouble. She was in an all-male company, and they sent her to me, and they gave me a note, and they said, we want her to clean latrines for 21 days. And if you know anything about cleaning latrines, Iraqis clean latrines and soldiers supervise them. That's our job now. And so you have these 3 details, and you actually have to go off the camp out into the fields to dump, because they have to clean out the latrines. You have to go dump them out at the site. So you actually have to go out of the base camp away from supervision. It's just, you know, you and the truck, and there's an Iraqi soldier or Iraqi employee on each side of you. And they wanted to send her out there by herself with these men. And I went up to the person that sent me that note. I said, I'm not going to do it. And they said, well, you're going to have to talk to the captain, because this is her punishment. I said, I don't care what you think. I went to the sergeant major, and we removed her from that duty and gave her a different one, because I was not about to put her in danger. A few months later, or actually a year later, I ran into her again, and they were trying to kick her out of the Army for that. And the commander had written a lot of bad things about her, and she was at the medical hold. And the commander there, I was working for him at the time, because I was on medical hold myself. And he came up and says, you know this soldier? I said, yes, I do, sir. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had written everything down that had happened and gave it to him, she would have been kicked out of the Army. She didn't want that, so I wanted to honor what she wanted. But they were setting her up, and they did a really good job. But she got to stay in after I talked to the commander and explained to them what was going on with her. And this is not an isolated case. This happens a lot to women out there. The other thing I want to talk about, there's so much, I just don't know. In terms of how they deal with the women, I was noticing how they deal for the holiday of, I just want to make a mention of this, the holiday of Memorial Day, when they were having this thing on television and they were showing all these soldiers from Iraq saying, Mom, my husband, my wife, my kids. What I really noticed is they didn't show any married women out there saying, this is for my husband, I miss you, I miss my kids, and there's a lot of married women out there. And so they really do a lot to erase that, and we need to bring that up. If you're married and you've been in Iraq, then you need to talk about that, because that's the one thing you never see. You don't know about the moms that are coming home with no legs or no arms, or severely with PTSD where they can't deal with their children anymore. I have 7 grandchildren and 2 sons who served in the military, one for 11 years and one for 2. So like I said, as a native, that's what we do. And personally, my own story, I came home to nothing. I used to do a lot of teachings with women. I held circles, I held ceremony, and would travel around doing retreats for women and teaching empowerment, teaching finding your voice, because we've lost that in this culture, in this society, in this Western culture. And when I came back, I couldn't even deal with the circle that I had left behind, and they felt very abandoned. And I used to have a lot of women living in my home. By the time I came home, they couldn't even talk to me anymore because I was so angry, and I couldn't deal with any of the pettiness. To me, everything they talked about anymore was petty. I didn't want to hear it. I lost connection with my mother, my brothers, my sons, my boyfriend, everybody, and I felt myself alone. And the other thing that really happened to me that I just recently came to my mind was, while I was in Iraq, I suffered from something called endometriosis, a women's illness, a disease that grows in your uterus. And prior to shipping out, I went to the doctor on base, and I said, look, I have this problem. I have severe uterine bleeding, and I need to be treated for it specifically, and I'm not going to get that treatment out there. And they said, oh no, they did all these tests that actually said nothing, because I took these things back to the VA, and they said, these reports actually don't say a darn thing about you. Just a lot of big words that nobody could understand, and nobody would admit that they could understand. So they sent me to Iraq anyway, and as a result of that, they deemed me fit for duty. And I just found the paper the other day, and I was shocked to even remember this, is that I came home on leave, and I ended up having a hysterectomy because there were no doctors to treat me out there. They were calling Germany to find out what to do for me. They were giving me shots and putting me on bed rest 3 days out of the week because I couldn't walk. The pain was so severe. And I'm really angry right now because my uterus didn't have to leave my body. And for Native people, that's a very important thing, because my uterus is where my children were made. My uterus going into menopause is a ceremony that puts me into grandmother's lodge. I don't get to have that ceremony now. I have to do something different. And there's a lot of things that were taken behind that uterus, and it wasn't just a part that didn't work anymore that could be taken out. And I want to say that if I bet it was something wrong with somebody having, I don't know what the disease is for men, but if they would have had that, I know they wouldn't go. You know, I know that because there was a first sergeant who didn't go because he had to have a surgery because he had prostate cancer. They weren't sure, and they wanted to make sure. And he didn't ship, but I did. So there's still a lot of unbalance in how they deal with that. And the reason that I shipped was because you need 84% in order to ship of soldiers. We were short 3. I was number 3. And if they would have deemed me unfit, my unit wouldn't have went, and they were dying to get out there. They were just wanting to get out there. They were teaching us how to hate. So that's the other thing. I'll tell you what my status is right now. When I left, my career has been as a social worker, as an alcohol drug counselor, dual diagnosis. I know about PTSD because I used to work with people who had it. And I've come back, and I'm no longer able to work. And I'm no longer able to work. I've had to demand. See, I don't accept what the VA has to offer. You're going to give me what I want. If I gave you what you wanted, you're going to give me what I want. I don't care. And I went there, and they said, you know, only men therapists. I said, nope, want a woman. It took me 3 months, got it. They said, oh, disability, state disability, you can only get $25 a week. I said, nope, wrote a letter to Governor Schwarzenegger. I got $750 every 2 weeks after my letter to Arnold. But as it stands at this point, I lost my disability because I ran out of funds. The military does not feed into disability, so you can't get state disability, and I've been waiting for my claim since October. I've been waiting for SSI since June, and I'm currently living on $164 of food stamps and $263 of general assistance. So this is what the Army has done for me. I do have a home. And I'm selling that home so that I can live. And I want to say that I know I'm not the only soldier that's going through this, because my friend 3 months ago that I served in Iraq with came home a year ago. And they found her dead in her home, and she'd been dead for 2 days because she had PTSD so bad and depression, and she couldn't tell anybody because there was nobody to tell. And she was a lieutenant, and she was my good friend. And so I just want you to know that the war isn't over when you come home, because it's a new war that starts. And I'm glad to see that women are here and speaking, because it's going to be the women who heal the earth. And we all have to take a stand. Women in the ancient days, they're the ones who dictated when we went to die in my culture. We were matriarchal. We have to find that, because we're the healers. We give life. We don't want to take it anymore. Thank you.